I hope that the internet is good. Here on top of the world, as you can see, I'm on the top of the world here, and you're probably watching it on repeat. I decided to let me know how the sound is, how the video quality is, and in this short live stream, I'd like to talk about one of the concepts that interests lots of people these days, and just a little bit of the behind the scenes about the channel called Victory Talking. So just a little bit of behind the scenes. A few days ago, I literally noticed that one of my most popular video, the most popular video on my channel is how to use your subconscious mind to learn foreign languages. And I was kind of shocked because I did so many interviews and I did so many interesting videos. And that one video where I'm just talking in front of the camera, sharing my experience, not to sell anything or not to promote anything. I was just sharing my experience on how to use subconscious mind at the time. And 1 year ago, I shot this video, and it is becoming more and more popular. And it brought me more subscribers than any other video. And if you're watching this live stream on repeat, or if you're watching it right now, one of the things I'd like to tell you is that if you came from that video, I'd like to first of all thank you for subscribing for the channel. And second of all, I'd like to tell you that there are so many things that I didn't even share. I don't even know how to put them correctly. I don't even know how to kind of formalize them in order to share those things that I actually noticed in my brain. And as an introduction part, I'd like to tell you that right now I live in Korea, and I've been living in Korea for over 1 year right now without going to other countries. And I actually noticed that some of my thoughts, especially simple thoughts, started to come up in in Korean. I started formulate my thoughts in Korean without even noticing it. Let's say, like, there is a thought, oh, I'm tired, or like, oh, I want to go to the toilet, or I want to eat, I'm hungry. So those types of thoughts, all of a sudden my brain started formulating those thoughts in Korean language 100%. And right now, it's like, I would say 1/3 of my thoughts are in English, 1/3 of them are in Russian probably, and another 1/3 is in Korean. Not in Chinese, because when I was in China, I lived in China for 3 years, obviously, I was thinking in Chinese like half of the time. And what is the reason behind it? It sounds kind of weird, it sounds kind of like unrelatable, completely like something impossible. How can a white guy, after living in Korea for just 1 year or even a few months, how can a white guy have thoughts in Korean language? How is it possible? And to answer this question, you need to understand how our subconscious mind works, and how actually you can go from not being able to talk, to speak this language, to being able to actually even think in this language, formulate your thoughts, being completely fluent. Actually, I finished editing my first daily vlog. It was just me and my girlfriend going to longboard in a city which is called Gimpo. And I was speaking Korean there, and I just decided to showcase kind of some of the activities that I used to do, when I speak Chinese or Korean. And so how is it possible that I went from complete zero to thinking in Korean in a really short period of time? How is it possible? Well, first of all, one of the things that you should look at how I live right now. So I basically don't speak any other language except for Korean in 90% of the situations. I'm Russian, but I don't speak Russian at all, because I only communicate with my parents in Russian. And it's just, again, like it's 5 to 10% of my time, and probably even less. So most of the time, when I do vlogging, I speak English. But I don't have friends that I communicate in English with regularly. So most of the time here in Korea, I speak only Korean. And what it does to your brain, if you do it 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, if you do it every single day, what happens is that your brain starts changing. It's a literal change of your brain. It's a complete rewiring of your habits. And you heard me talking about it in my videos. I was like, guys, it's like being reborn. You can't believe it, and people cannot believe it. When you actually start speaking a foreign language 24/7 for a few months, your habits change, your brain changes, your thought patterns change sometimes. Of course, your personality doesn't change that much. Sometimes, like, it can change a lot depending on where you come from. For example, I come from Russia. I used to be really negative back in Russia, and then I became more positive in Asia. First, I need to formulate it, and only after that I can say it to another person. And so this is what happens with your thoughts as well. When you're not talking to other people, this habit, it is created because of socializing. And now all of a sudden, when you're by yourself, when you don't socialize with other people, what happens is that your brain starts just formulating those thoughts like a habit. It happens. Those people who immigrated to another country and speak completely another language and don't speak their own language, they can relate to it better. But my personal case, the uniqueness of my situation is that I actually had thoughts coming up in Chinese 24/7, in English, in Russian, in Korean. And so I didn't have it with Japanese just yet, but I will have it when I immerse myself in the environment of speaking Japanese. And so this is how our brain works. This is how our subconscious mind works. And why is this live stream called "How to Use Your Subconscious Mind to Learn Foreign Languages"? It's quite of an like, why do I share this story with you? First of all, you need to understand that the speed, the fluency, and the speed of this very process of how our thoughts are created, how our thoughts are formulated, and the speed with which we are able to speak any language, it all comes out from subconscious mind. And the reason why. I think I should change the place here. It's just so much, a lot of food smell here. I think I need to go to another place in a while. So the reason why I just keep emphasizing this thing about subconscious mind is that our brain, the rational part of our brain, the conscious part of our brain, is way too slow, guys. It's way too slow to master foreign languages. It is too slow. So basically, this conscious part of our brain is too slow to master foreign languages, to become fluent in a language, to memorize faster. The conscious part is too slow. And the subconscious part is the quickest. And this is why I just keep emphasizing that you need to use your subconscious mind, that this fluency becomes when your subconscious reprograms itself and stuff like this. And so this is kind of one of the main reasons why I just keep emphasizing it. And people, again, they're completely shocked when you can just speak a language so fast that you don't even think about it. And again, like, from the outside perspective, it can seem like the person is genius, but it's not. That he's not a genius. He's just trained. His brain is trained to speak in a certain way. His brain is trained. His brain has created shortcuts for like kind of the speech patterns that he uses all the time. Those shortcuts are created in his brain, and this is how he is able to speak this language. The retrieval power increases. And so let's talk about how you can actually reprogram your brain. Let's talk about how you can actually use your subconscious mind to speak foreign languages. I am talking about those types of advice all the time, like pre-testing, proving to your brain that it's a critical piece of information. Let's consider two types of situations. So the first type of situation is that no matter what language you're learning right now, let's say it's Japanese. So imagine that you're put in an environment where people speak only Japanese, they don't speak your language. Imagine that you need to have a conversation, you need to have some kind of communication in this environment. And let's say you need to have a 10-minute conversation, even 10-minute conversation with this person. And after this short experience, you're given a textbook. And your goal is to memorize a set of vocabulary words, to certain grammatical patterns, and learn a certain piece of grammar. Like basically learn a certain piece of information for speaking Japanese. And this is the first situation. And the second situation is when you're just in a classroom, and when the teacher just presents you the new vocabulary. And it's all traditional, this traditional system that you used to live in. Like, you go to a classroom, you sit there and you're sitting all the time, you don't talk to people, you're writing down words, and the teacher just presents some new grammatical pattern. You read the sentence and you just fall asleep during the class, and you go home and you're like, fuck, I just don't like this language. It seems so boring. The learning process is so boring. And so, imagine those two situations. The first one is you had to use the language before you could actually speak it. And the second, and it was really social and really relevant to your brain and to your subconscious mind as well. And the second situation is when you're presented an information before you actually need it, before you actually can use it, before you know how to use it, before you feel like you need to use it. And so those are two different kinds of situations. And this is the answer to the question on how do children learn languages so quickly without textbooks, without going through grammatical exercises, without all those things. And on my coaching program, what I do usually is that, especially right now, since I started improving it and actually started applying my own methods more and more and experimenting with it, is that I try to push students to talk and to formulate sentences and to expand them first from self-introduction, a second from answering questions, and then to asking questions. So this is the process I go through. Let's say with Korean. So after a month, after a person already knows a little bit of vocabulary, a little bit of grammar, again, I do pre-testing during the first month as well, like a small pieces of pre-testing. But after the first month, what I do, after the especially first 2 months, is that we're working on self-introduction first, and then I teach the person how to answer the questions. But before I teach any material, I try to ask as many questions as possible. Like, for example, before saying it to a person that this particular question means this particular thing, I try to ask this question in Korean. Let's say I want to ask, did you eat? 밥 먹었어? 밥 먹었어? 밥 먹었어요? Did you eat anything today? Before actually teaching this question to a person, I ask this question first. And you know what I found out? Guess what? Like, people can guess the meaning of this question in many times. People can guess meaning of many questions without even knowing the language. This is again how subconscious mind works. If you want to know more about it, check out the book Subliminal. I think this is how it's called. I don't remember the author. Check out the book by Nobel Prize winner Daniel. I think his name is. Anyway, his surname is Kahneman, and the book is called Thinking Fast and Slow. And another book is How We Learn. Again, don't remember the author of the book How We Learn, but I just always keep forgetting it. So the thing is that your brain works in a way that if you don't prove it, that this information is critical, if you don't pre-test it, if you don't ask questions first, your brain will not be able to memorize any piece of information. It is just like it is. It's just like it happens. And what does traditional system? What do? I ask my students questions before giving them answers. I make them listen to a certain text first. I make them read this text first and guess the meaning a few times before I present them with vocabulary. And before I start explaining grammar. Before explaining grammar, I make them to go through a bunch of grammatical exercises. And so those small, tiny, subtle changes actually make it so much relevant. What it creates is that there is no magic pill. There is no just like, I will learn the language like in fucking like 2 weeks or something. But those subtle changes, they create 10 to 20% improvements, like going to different places for studying. Those small changes create 10 to 20% improvements in students. And those 10 to 20% improvements, if you're familiar with, actually my major is investment, and I know how percentages works, they multiply over time. There's a multiplication effect going on there. So 10% becomes 20%, it sums up over time. There is an effect which is like with percentage rates. So basically these small subtle changes, they add up, sum up over time, and they turn into 100% improvement, 200% improvement. And all of a sudden, after 3 months on my program, after 4 months, people just go from 0 to intermediate. Literally, the guy went from HSK 1 to HSK 4 in Chinese just in a few months. Like it was unbelievable even for me, guys. Like I can't, like even I didn't learn as fast as my students do. Like it's crazy because I already use everything that I every kind of mistake that I did myself, my students usually don't do it. Like using apps, using video courses and stuff like this. Cumulative effect. Exactly, Alex. Exactly. Cumulative effect. And so those subtle changes, it's like you learn a new language. You know, it's like you learn 1 word, 2 words, and you don't see an improvement. You learn 100 words, you don't see an improvement. But all of a sudden, all of a sudden you have a situation when you have to use this language for a few hours, and all of a sudden you realize that you're not as bad as you thought. And so this is the change that you didn't see in yourself happening. And so it's really important, those subtle changes, changes in approach before teaching the vocabulary. Ask students to guess this vocabulary's meaning in the text. Ask them to read, ask them to listen. So this is the very first thing. And the second thing I'd like to tell you is that actually, if somebody who greetings from Greece, Alex. Glad to see you here. So basically, if some of you guys who watch this live stream right now, or some of you guys who watch this live stream on repeat, if you have children, you can apply this advice for teaching your children any type of skill, not only foreign language. Ask them to do this. It's like a lean startup approach. You know, this book is called Lean Startup. And the basic takeaway from this book is that you should start before you're ready. And this is the basic takeaway from this book. And it's really applicable to languages as well. You should start speaking this language before you're ready. Again, before you're ready, you should start doing it. And those subtle changes, they add up over time. So this is the very first thing, pre-testing, putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. This is the very first advice I'd like to give you here in this live stream. It's more in depth. I know that I talked about it for thousands of times in every one of my videos. I say pre-testing, but what does it actually mean? Like, what is the actual example of it? And in this live stream, this is basically what I would like to tell you. Thing number two that I would like to tell you is that nobody talks about it, and I have never talked about it in any of my videos, probably. And this thing is actually extremely important. I noticed it when learning Chinese, and the more foreign languages I learn, the more I realize this thing. This is understanding how your subconscious mind works, and how your intuition works, and how your intuition is related to your subconscious mind. So let me just share you some story, one particular story that happens to me over and over again. It started happening to me many years ago, and it happens to me every time. So I had many situations learning Chinese. I had many situations when I forgot how to pronounce the character, what does this character mean, or how to write this character. I had many situations like this when I forgot, let's say, how to pronounce the character, or the meaning of the character. And if you're familiar with Chinese language, if you don't remember how to pronounce the character, you can't search it in a dictionary unless you take a photo of it and scan it and stuff like this. And so it becomes quite an annoying type of thing, you know. There is no alphabet in Chinese, so there is pinyin, and if you don't know the pinyin of the character, it's really hard to find it unless you scan it. At that time, actually, I didn't even know about the scanning thing. I didn't know that you can actually translate the character just by scanning it with your camera using some apps. And so back in the days, I had this interesting situation happening to me. I looked at, I remember I was reading a text, I looked at the character, and I was like, oh, damn, it seems that I learned it, but I'm not even sure that I learned it. I'm not even sure that I know this character. I'm not sure that I know the pinyin. It doesn't feel like I know this character. And all of a sudden, something distracted me at that moment. Let's say somebody called me, or I went to the toilet or something like this. Some distraction happened after it. And after 5 to 10 minutes of this distraction, I just came back to the same book, and what I noticed was that pinyin, like this pattern, appeared in my head. I had the pronunciation in my head after 10 minutes of distraction. Do you catch it? Like, you look at the character for like 10 minutes, you don't even know whether you learned it or not. And after you came back to the book after a few minutes, you realize that you know this, that you have pronunciation of this character. You don't even know whether you know it or not still. You search for it, and you find this character. How is it possible? You don't even know whether you know this character or not. How is it possible? It's impossible. For our consciousness, it's a completely impossible thing. Is it intuition? What is it? And so I started digging deep. I started looking into research. I started reading books. And yes, there are effects like this. There are subliminal, subconscious effects happening to us every single day. Every single day. There is a technique that I don't even teach my students these days because it's so advanced. You need you need to be you need to be in tune. It's almost like you need to do kind of a meditation on yourself or something. You need to be so acute to your mental processes so that you can catch some thoughts and you can 100% know that those thoughts come from subconscious mind and you can catch them. And so this is the technique that I want you to experiment with. You probably have it happening, actually. You probably had this kind of experience. If you had it happening, put it in comments below. If you had this experience happening to you when you are looking for some answer to a question you don't even know, and then all of a sudden you find the answer, and it appears out of nowhere. And this is what happens. Your subconscious mind, which is called intuition in some cases as well, your subliminal tells you the truth. What you've already learned or you already saw it somewhere and you don't even remember it. You consciously don't even register that this information is in your brain. This is crazy. This is crazy, guys. And so what I do right now, let me give you an example how I do. Let's say I have a coaching session with some of my students. And all of a sudden, I just see the character that I don't even remember because I left China like 2 years ago. And of course, I don't know every single damn character. And I know that I know this character, I know that I learned it, I assume it. And so what I used to do is that I look at it intensively and try to kind of think of the pronunciation and try to think of it. And then I distract myself. I just relax my brain, completely relax my brain. And then I look at it again, and if the answer doesn't appear, I do it again. I relax my brain again. I just do that something else. I just relax. And as soon as there is just one small thought coming up in my brain, I just catch it. I catch it like this. I just catch it. And oftentimes, it turns out to be at least part of the pronunciation, at least the pronunciation which is close to the truth. Because it's not perfect. Sometimes, like let's say you have a character and sometimes a few pronunciation comes up, like from subconsciousness, a few of them comes up. For example, like some ba, ma, like those kinds of syllables, they come up. You see that there is something with ah, and you kind of try to catch it, and there are a few options that you have, and you just put them in the dictionary. There is nothing perfect. There is no perfection. But oftentimes there is a perfect scenario as well when you have completely like perfect pronunciation coming up with tones as well and with translation all of a sudden in your brain after distraction. And so let's call this technique subliminal distraction. What it means is that you are distracting yourself when faced with some difficulty, when faced with some kind of a task where you need to use your subconscious mind. You intensively think on this task, and then you distract yourself. What about the scientific research about this topic? Is it just me speculating about it? Or, Victor, is it just something that you developed or you thought of? Or should we believe you when watching this or rewatching this live stream? And how should we believe you, Victor? So this is the question. It's like when I watch some people's live stream, I don't like to hear their opinions. I always like a some scientific background behind it. So this is in the book How We Learn. There is a research that there is one of the techniques that there is a research related to it as well, and it's scientifically proven. So basically, what scientists found was that after we push ourselves really hard when working on some task, when trying to figure out some problem, oftentimes what happens is that after we distract ourselves from doing this particular thing, from thinking about it, our brain still thinks about this problem on automatic mode, but our subconscious mind does it. So our consciousness doesn't do it. So let's say you're thinking about this character's pronunciation, you're trying to find it and you try to think about it for such a long time, and then all of a sudden, again, you went to do something else. You were distracted, your friend called you. And while having a conversation with your friend on the phone, you think that you stopped thinking about this character, but your brain still does think about it. Your brain still tries to find answers. It's a subliminal effect. A subconscious mind still calculates, still tries to find the answer to this question. And after you come back to your book, all of a sudden you see that there are some answers, some possibilities coming up in your brain. But the key here, this is what actually scientists actually found. If you are curious about this particular thing, again, check out the book, How We Learn. There's only one book in the world which is called How We Learn. Even if I don't remember the author right now, but you can check out this book, and they actually present this research. They actually present this kind of technique. And but the difficulty with this technique is, the first thing, it doesn't work every single time. It doesn't mean that if you're working on some task, or if you learn some character, and if you distract yourself, you will have an answer in your head popping up like a magic. It doesn't mean that it happens all the time. Second thing, you need to know how to do it. You need to know how to do it. What does it mean? Well, it means that most of us can't actually read our intuition, can't actually feel our subconscious mind. And it comes with practice. There is a thought coming up in your brain, but you can't even catch it. You can't even register it. This is the first thing. You need to train yourself. And what you do is that you kind of do almost like a meditation practice. You basically try to turn off your brain, just turn it off, and just register whatever comes up in your head. Just register whatever comes up. This is the very first thing. And the second thing is that your subconscious mind will not work subliminally, unconsciously on this particular task. It will not search for answers for this particular problem unless you pushed yourself far enough, when you made yourself uncomfortable enough, and when you thought about this task for a long enough time. It doesn't mean that, oh, I don't know what it means. You looked at it for a second, and then you're getting distracted, and then you go back to the task, and then you know the answer. No, you need to push yourself. You need to push yourself as much as you can. Even if it's just a few minutes, you need to just really kind of try so hard to think about the answer to this question, and then distract yourself, and then go back to this task again. And then relax your brain and catch whatever thought comes up in your brain. Again, it's scientifically proven, and this is a technique that I didn't develop it. I just noticed it, and then I read about it, and I researched it, and I packaged it like my own thing. But it doesn't mean that I did the research or find it out myself, okay? So it doesn't mean I'm not developing anything here. So I'm just creating a system which is based on what's already there. It's I'm kind of building on the shoulders of giants. And I don't hear anybody talking about it when it comes to learning foreign languages and learning any type of skill. I'm really kind of shocked why people don't talk about it enough. And so this is really important, guys. So again, the first thing is pre-test yourself. The second thing is do subliminal distractions. Push yourself hard on the task, then distract yourself, come back to it, and find the answer. Okay, so what is the third technique when it comes to using your subconscious mind when learning foreign languages? People ask me, Victor, should you just listen to audios when sleeping? Or for example, you turn on an audio in this language and you go to sleep and you wake up and start speaking. I didn't experiment with this type of thing. If you're aware about this kind of research, you can share it with me. Another thing about subconscious mind that I actually experimented with is basically many people ask me this question: is it better to learn a language for 2 hours in one sitting, or is it better to learn 20 minutes, let's say 6 20-minute sessions? It's what is better, 6 20-minute sessions, which is 120 minutes, or 2 hours in one sitting? What is better? If you can guess, what is better? Based on what I just told you, actually, the answer is obvious. 20-minute sessions are much more effective. Much more effective. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Ikibekhair. Omoranyong. Yeah, so basically, multiple 20-minute sessions are so much more effective than just 2 hours in one sitting. Why is it so? It's because your brain, there are a few effects I'd like to share with you here. The first of all, if you're doing 20-minute sessions, Yeah, greetings from Pakistan. So the first thing is your brain resets itself. This is why you need to do your focus resets itself. It's scientifically proven that there is no person that has a perfect focus for 2 hours. What I noticed with my students in my coaching program, after 1 hour, people just doze the fuck off. It's just like after 1 hour, people it's like this, like literally, people just get tired after 1 hour. And actually, it's scientifically proven. I think the focus time is around like 40 minutes. I think it changes every year. Right now, it becomes less and less. But obvious thing is that we can't focus for a long time, and we need to reset our focus, reset our receptors, reset our receptivity, and reset our brain activity like every once in a while. And distraction actually is good if you know how to use it. Every 20 or 40 minutes, thanks man, thanks for loving my videos. Every 20 to 40 minutes, you basically take a break and you distract yourself from this activity, which resets your focus, and it basically resets your attention and your learning power. So again, it's better to learn in sets. This is the first thing. The second reason is just the same reason that I shared with you in my previous rule for using your subconscious mind. It's because of subliminal effects that happen to your brain. Because of subliminal effects. When you learn the foreign language for 20 or 40 minutes, and then when you take a break for 30 minutes or for 20 minutes or something, your brain still relearns this language. Subliminally, subconsciously, it still goes through the same thing. And when you see it, again, when you sit down and open that book, it makes more sense to your brain. Your brain is already primed. And then you do another session, and then you take another break, and then you do another session, and then you take another break and another break. And so, in this case, 20 plus 20 plus 20 plus 20 plus 20 and so on till 120 minutes is more than 2 hours. You know, it's almost impossible. Like 2 hours is more than 2 hours kind of equation, which means that if you take breaks, I just came from Korean lecture. Yeah, happy to hear that. So when you take those short breaks, it resets your brain, and your learning becomes much more effective. It's much better to take more. It's also, there is a rule, it's called spacing rule as well. Spacing rule is so famous, you can check it out. Another reason for this thing. How spacing rule works. Basically, you don't need to see it on one thing and learn it every single day until you just perfectly memorize it. How do I go about vocabulary? I just read it once and I just go, I just move forward. I don't even cram it, I just read it. Because I know how my brain works. I know that after I go through a certain set of vocabulary, I know that my brain will automatically memorize 20% of it or something. And I know that I need to go forward, and then I can come back to this vocabulary, and my brain will automatically memorize even more. So I don't waste my time on just sitting there. Yeah, spaced repetition, not reputation, repetition. Spaced repetition, spaced learning, spaced repetition. I know that I don't cram it. I don't constantly test myself. I don't just look at this vocabulary over and over again. And another thing I do is that I know that this vocabulary will be in exercises below, and I know that I will have to use it anyway. And so I know that my brain will be uncomfortable enough so that next time, after going through those exercises, next time when I come back to this vocabulary, my brain will be like, oh, this vocabulary is so critically important because I needed it when doing exercises. So this is how our brain works. So this is why, again, you need to study in sets. You need to study in 20, 30, or 40-minute sessions. Don't study 5 hours in one sitting on something. It's boring, it's exhausting. Deep immersion is good at times, don't get me wrong. There is some truth to deep immersion sometimes. But generally, it's so much more effective to take a nap, to be distracted by even some stupid Instagram video, but then, or by Victor Talking live stream, and then come back to learning again. So this is one of the kind of the top advices, the best advice that I give to my students. And another thing I'd like to tell you, when it comes to learning foreign languages, the next rule that I'd like to give you here is related to memorizing vocabulary and grammar. So let's call this rule like understanding the vocabulary and grammar. So this would be the fourth thing in this live stream I'd like to give, the fourth practical advice. Let's talk about vocabulary first. What is vocabulary? What is the word? A word is some image, right? It's some kind of image in our head. Let's say, if I say the word apple, you think of an apple like an image, right? Yeah, timetable for what? I didn't quite get it. So vocabulary. So if I say the word apple, you automatically imagine apple. If I say some student, the word student, you automatically imagine student. And those words are not just words. Those words are not just vocabulary pieces, but those words are it's kind of an image that you imagine in your head, right? And what if you learn a word for saying apple in Japanese or in Chinese or in Korean, like, right? Can you just automatically memorize it just because you know that it's apple, just because you have this image? Can you automatically memorize it? The answer, some people say you should use association rule. You should say like, oh, in Japanese, chest means mune, and I just imagine that like there are money growing out of my chest, and money is similar to mune, and so mune means chest, and yeah, I remember this word. Yeah, you can remember 5 words like this, but you cannot remember 2,000 or 5,000 words like this. In order to be more or less fluent, you need to remember thousands of words in language. And so it's impossible to create like that many associations on a constant basis. Use them and don't forget about those associations. I mean, people who just like memorize digits, they use association rule a lot. They have this association like 2 is horse, and 1 is a sausage, and 2 and 1 is sausage and horse, and they just create some bizarre story in their head, and they're able to memorize like hundreds of digits in extremely short periods of time. Association rule doesn't necessarily work when it comes to learning a foreign language, especially when it comes to actually becoming a polyglot and professionally / native fluent in this language, because you just forget the association. You just forget the association. And when people tell you that you should use associations when learning a foreign language, when learning some vocabulary sets, you should ask them, do you use associations when learning your mother tongue? Like, for example, for learning a word, student, do you have any associations? Did you apply association rule? And people will respond to you, no. And this is my response to you when it comes to memorizing vocabulary in any foreign language. Those people who tell you that you need to use an association rule when learning a foreign language, those people, I make an educated guess, didn't achieve extremely good levels in any foreign language. Or they achieved it in spite of thinking that this rule is helpful, So this rule is not helpful, it's not practical. It's practical in some really narrow settings, like you need to memorize a set of digits and stuff. I talk about it because I know it, I try to apply it. I tried to apply it many times. I read the book. I know about this rule from many years ago. I tried to learn Chinese this way. I tried to do many things. But what do you need to do to memorize vocabulary? What do you need to do? Well, the answer is really easy and straightforward. Vocabulary, a set of vocabulary. When my students come to my program, they're like, "Hey, Victor, how many words do they need to memorize? How much does it take to become fluent in or conversational language?" And I always tell them, you need to have 2,000 words in your brain. But when I say 2,000 words, a minimum, it doesn't mean words. I mean situations. 2,000 situations, not associations, not some stupid stuff like this. 2,000 situations in your head. Situations. What is a situation? Situation is a sentence. Situation is a context. So you need to have 2,000 contexts in your head, in your brain, pre-programmed, even if you don't remember them, in order to memorize a word. What does it take to memorize a word? Let's say you learn a word, apple, in Korean, sagwa. Let's say you learn this word. And then what does it take to memorize it? It takes, you need to go through a process of recognizing and relearning and reviewing and forgetting this word multiple times in different contexts. Multiple times in different contexts. And this is how you basically catch it. Yes. So basically, you learn words not even with one sentences, not even with two sentences, but you need to see, you need to be exposed in this word, you need to be exposed with this word in a different, multiple contexts. What does it even mean, guys? What do I mean? Like, can you give a practical example, Victor? Please, can you give a practical? Okay. First of all, you see the vocabulary word in your new words list in the textbook. And you're like, I can't remember this, I can't memorize it. What should I do? Should I create some stupid monkey association with this thing? How to know context B, CS, for example, Farsi and Urdu have similar words but come used in different contexts. You learn different contexts for every word. You learn different contexts. There are even different similar pronunciations, similar writings, but you learn different contexts and you learn how to distinguish between them. So this is what you do. Let me go back to my example. You'll see what I mean. So new words, I see the word apple in the new word section, Sagwa. I see the word apple. And when I go through exercises, I see this word a few times in example sentences, in the exercise sentences. And then I see this word in the text. And then I hear this word somewhere from audio from this book. And so I was exposed to this word 5 times on the first day when learning it. And then I forget it. And then I am exposed to it again. And then I memorize it. So this is, sometimes it takes like so many times to forget a word to remember it. People think that if they forget a word, it's bad. Hello, welcome to a fucking traditional system that taught you that, oh, you're so bad, you forgot the word. In my system, I tell my students that it's really good to forget. I want you to forget faster, I want you to forget more, and I want you to forget those things like moving forward. The more you forget, the better. Active recalling. It depends on what you mean by active recalling. Yeah, when reviewing a piece of vocabulary, don't just look at this word in one example sentence. Recall it in a context, like some text. The bigger the context, the better. The more usages of this word that you see, the better. So this is extremely important that you see usages of this word. And another thing is that the reason why vocabulary books don't work, I bought a multiple of vocabulary books. Let's say like 2,000 words from Korean language, or 5,000 words for passing HSK 5 or something. Those vocabulary books, they're extremely ineffective, guys. And the reason I went through many of them, I use them more than anybody else. I use them to prepare for exams, I use them for my self-study, and they're so much ineffective. Although there is a word, a translations, and an example sentence, and it seems like it's enough, but it's not enough, because one example sentence is not enough. But many people who watched my videos, they're like, Victor, but in your videos, you told us to write down 2,000 words and to create your own vocabulary bank. And why do you say that I can't buy a book without writing it? It's different. When you write down a word, you kind of create, it's kind of a mental mapping kind of thing, you know? You create this particular, so your brain already remembers the situation. It kind of memorizes the situation. You think about it twice, how to write it. You think what kind of translations to choose. You think about what example sentences to write, what conjugations, what examples to write. And you take so much effort to write down this word, so that it's more than enough to memorize it, at least in the first place. So it's extremely important. Don't think that it's the same thing to buy a vocabulary book and to write the vocabularies yourself. It's different. Another thing, it's not about how you write down your notes. It's not about let's say it's not about how many words you write down on a daily basis. It's about how you review them. Again, it's not about how many words in your notebook you have. It's about how you review them. I have one student went through my program. I get him to conversational, and he wrote down about 1,000 words, but he didn't review them. He became conversational, but he didn't review them. And I always keep saying, it's a mistake. It's one of the mistakes my students have. What I do, the practical tip, if you are writing down tons of words every single day or grammatical patterns, how do you review them? This is what you do. If you write down them in on a computer, or if you write them down in a notebook, here's what you do. First thing you do is that you divide them into chunks. Don't think of it like a whole thing. Divide them into chunks. I divide them, I used to write them in my notebook, so I divide them into one-pager chunks. One page. One page is a chunk, one page, so it's a different set. And what I do is that I draw 10 boxes. 10 boxes that you can tick. You can tick the box, right? So I draw 10 different boxes on the top of the page. And before ticking the box, what does it mean to tick the box? It means that I basically test myself. I test myself on on this particular vocabulary set. So I close one part of the page. Active recall, example, what your teacher taught you in school. Try to recall what teacher taught you when you get home. Okay, so basically, you close one page, let's say with translation, and you try to guess what this word means. And you test yourself multiple times until you get this page perfectly, and you tick the box. When can you tick the next box? You tick the next box when just on another day, only on another day. You cannot tick 2 boxes in one day, which means that you need to test yourself on this particular vocabulary set, on this chunk of vocabulary, on 10 different days, 10 days, 10 days, okay? In 10 days, you need to forget and go through them again. It takes 10 days. And so again, like students in my program, they found it more than enough to basically go back to the same pages 10 different days. They found it more than enough to perfectly memorize it. Another thing, you don't need to be perfect in memorization. So let's talk about grammar right now. So I was talking about vocabulary. In short, you don't memorize 2,000 words, you memorize 2,000 situations and contexts and types of context. You don't memorize words, you memorize situations. Okay, let's go to the grammar. What do you do with grammar? So many people are like, oh, grammar is not important, you don't need to learn grammar. I just learn words and nouns. I just learn nouns and verbs you just need to learn verbs, and grammar is not important. You just need to know 2,000 words to speak a language. And I'm like, it depends on how you want to speak this language. If you want to make people smile when you speak this language, you can just memorize nouns or verbs, something. But if you want to make people shocked by how proficient, fluent, and native like you are, this is how you learn. First thing, when talking about grammar, here are just a set, like kind of a part of traditional methods that are really effective. Go through the exercises, grammatical exercises, and get the feedback of the teacher, or get an answer key to get the feedback about how you go through those exercises. Go through the exercise, the very first thing. How do you personally connect with words on an emotional level? For example, in metaphorical meaning of certain phrases. So you don't connect with them on an emotional level. Sometimes it happens naturally. Let's say somebody tells you a joke in a foreign language and teaches you what those words mean, and they seem to be funny, or there is some critical situation related to this word, and because it's like there is a guy. There is a guy. His name is Jim Quick or something. Yeah, Jim Quick, and he says, like knowledge without an emotion. I forgot. So basically, the basic takeaway from what he says is that you cannot create a memory without creating an emotion, which is actually true. It's actually true, but you cannot create 2,000 emotion 5,000 times about the word. Right? Like it's like practically, right? Like practically cannot be like, oh my God, like this word. But actually you do create emotions. This is what happens. When you forget a word, this is already a kind of an emotion of being kind of being uncomfortable with forgetting, and then reviewing it again and having this aha moment, and forgetting again and having aha moment again. And so so let's say you go through this process 5 times with a particular word, and you'll remember it. Okay, so this is already what happens. It happens automatically. You don't need to focus on it and be like, I need to think about something really good or something really bad, and just like emotional think about this word and I'll memorize it. Don't waste your time. Okay, don't waste your time. Many people who give advice on how to memorize stuff, how to work with your brain, they actually don't speak any foreign languages. You need to realize it, guys. It's not that those people have bad intentions, but they are a bit uneducated about how to learn foreign languages. They're really educated about how brain works and sometimes some tricks, some tactics to use, but they're really sometimes the advice goes extremely ineffective and extremely misleading when it comes to actual, let's say association rules, stuff like this. It's extremely uneducated advice, guys, extremely uneducated. Especially for Asian languages, or especially for languages which are really outside of your group of languages. If you speak English and you learn Italian, Spanish, German, it's really easy to do sometimes to create some kind of associations related to your language. But if you're learning languages like Chinese, it's impossible to create associations related to pronunciation. Like, it's impossible because it's just like one syllable, like 2-syllable words, which completely unrelated. Yeah, and it's just like you need to memorize tones as well, and characters as well, and context, and just crazy. And so the thing is that, yeah, so going back to the grammar thing, the first thing you do is that you go through the exercises. You go through the exercises, and then you get a feedback. The second thing that you do is that again, like on my program, I always get students' workbooks, and I test them multiple times on the same grammar over and over again. And of course, you need to review, you need to go through the exercises. And the next thing that you do is that you try to, when it comes to grammar, here's one exercise that I do with my students. Let's say we have a text, we have a new text in a textbook, and ask them to recall this text after a while. After we go through it multiple times, I ask them to recall this text. Yes, so basically, you need to recall this text using the grammar, using the new words, using new vocabulary. You need to recall this text, try to recall it. And when doing it, my students already use new grammar, new words, and they kind of simulate the process. Yeah, so basically they kind of simulate the process. I wanted to say hello or bye-bye in is it how you say it? Halach Havitz? Yeah. Yeah, I only know Salam Alaikum Rahmatullah. Yeah, ik beheer. Yeah, so basically, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. Yeah, this is how you do it. So you go through exercises. It's Urdu. Oh, I see. So you go through the exercise with grammar. You go through the exercise, you get the feedback, you get the proper feedback, and the next thing that you do is that you try to use this grammar when recalling a certain text, a certain situations, when talking about certain situations. With my students, I do it when talking about the text, when trying to recall some example sentences, try to recall the content of the text as well. Yes, I see. Urdu is national language of Pakistan. Yes. Okay, so you try to recall it and you try to use it. So again, first thing, go through the exercises, and second thing, try to use this grammar right from the start. Try as soon as you learn it, try to recall the text, try to recall the example sentences, try to form your own sentences. This is how you do it. You do it by using. You master grammar by using. Yeah. So I think my voice became kind of weak right now. Guys, if you have any questions, I'd like to close up it here. I'll probably be more regular with my live streams, but if you have any questions, I think 1 hour is already pretty good to go for today. If you have any questions, please let me know here in the chat. You can also ask them in comments after I finish this live stream. What about dialect? What do you mean, like dialect? Do you mean like how do you learn it, or how do you go about it, or how do you deal with it, or how do you not discouraged by it? Like what do you mean, like the dialect? What is the actual question? You mean like when learning? Yeah, I see that it's when learning a language. But what is it? So many people get discouraged. Let's say they learn Chinese and they're like, there are so many dialects. How do I go about them? I don't understand people on the street and stuff. Well, I learned the kind of the dialect. I can say that I learned one of the dialects. I mean, it's not the dialect per se. Like it's called the dialect, but I mean, I can't say that I learned the dialect, but I definitely mastered some part of it, so that people don't even understand that I'm a foreigner when I'm on the phone. Yeah, in Chinese there is a dialect called Dunbeihua. You don't do anything about it when let's say you learn Chinese or any other foreign language, and it turns out that there are so many dialects. For example, in Spain, as in which you can relate with other dialect as well as the same time. If you mean like how can you master dialect at the same time with like learning a language? So first of all, like when you learn, how was your experience with Korean grammar? Is it difficult? Okay, so let me answer like the first question. So relate with other dialects. So first of all, if you want to master any sort of dialect when learning a language, you can go to a certain province, let's say in China, or if you're talking about Spanish language or any other language, you go to a certain province and you basically learn the proper language when taking classes. And then socializing with people, you learn it offline with people and see how they talk and try to mimic them and socialize with them and learn it like this. So this is how I did it in China. When it comes to online learning, I actually, like the first thing I'd like to tell you, I wouldn't recommend to learn anything else, any other language, any other dialect. I'll answer the question. So you shouldn't focus on anything else except for mastering this language, like this formal form of the language, this standard form of the language. Focus on this thing, and until you master it on an intermediate/advanced fluent level, only like until it, you cannot focus on anything else. It's my best advice for you, because if you are worried about time and efficiency, if you're like me, I wouldn't recommend you. You can play around, you can have fun, but don't focus on it. Don't focus on dialects. Don't think about it. If you want to learn dialect, the best way is to go to the place which is related to this dialect, the province or part of the country. How was your experience with Korean grammar? Is it difficult? So Korean grammar is extremely difficult. People say that Chinese is one of the most difficult languages in the world. For me, still Korean is the most difficult one. I will explain why, because it's the word order and the logic of expressions completely different. The best way how you can go about mastering Korean grammar is getting a bunch of workbooks, going through them with the teacher as well, getting a teacher, getting workbooks, and practicing as much as you can. There is no other way. As for the shortcuts that I told you about, you can go back to go to my videos about the shortcuts and rewatch this live stream, like pre-testing and stuff like this. But there is no other way other than like actually going through the exercises and like actually jumping in conversations and practicing the same grammar over and over and over again. There is no other way. It's extremely difficult. How long did you take to switch your mind to the Korean sentence structure? It doesn't. So basically, how long did it take me to switch my mind to Korean? It doesn't happen like a switch. It happens step by step. Like switch is something that happens at once, right? But for me, before mastering Korean, it took me years to be comfortable with this. And it took me months at first to get to conversational, and then it's a slow process that takes years to get used to it. And there is no switch, it's a step-by-step process. If you're asking about conversational level, you can basically get it in a few months with the right system. You won't be completely, you won't get used to Korean grammar completely, but you'll be able to express yourself, and you'll be able to be on a kind of self-sufficiency level with the language, which means that you can ask about meaning of the words in this language, you can talk about in this language without switching to English or some other language. And so this is what it means. You can go to conversational practically, depends on how many hours you can study, but after 4 months it should be a little bit more comfortable, I would say, to be expressing yourself in many situations, if you study hard enough. So for some people it takes longer. Okay guys, so put your comments, put your questions down below. Again, check out my website. Years to get used to Korean grammar, you said. Yeah, I said yes. You can get to conversational quicker, but if you want to get used to it, it's become fluent. Used to it is to become more or less fluent. It can take years to used to it, to perfectly used to it, to get used to it. For some people, it takes shorter. If you live in Korea and just learn, you just speak Korean 24/7. I mean, it depends on the context, depending on your personal situation. Can take months, can take years. But basically, for me, it took much longer because I was learning Korean in China, and I was making the whole bunch of mistakes of learning. Okay, guys, so if you want to jump on a personal consultation call with me, if you're interested in my coaching program, go to victorytalking.com/coaching. victorytalking.com/coaching. It's about, you say you learned it in a year. Learn and master conversational language, learn and master a language on a conversational or fluent level doesn't mean that you're used to this grammar completely. You probably formulated your question in this way, that I understand it kind of differently than you do. But the thing is that to completely get used to the language, it means that you have thoughts in this language. And I started speaking Korean much quicker than 1 year. I learned Korean much quicker than 1 year. I didn't spend 1 year on before I started speaking it. But before I used to the grammar, it took me a long time. It's different. For me, it's kind of different. Again, guys, hope you enjoyed the live stream. If you're watching it on repeat, again, go to victorytalking.com/coaching, or just go to victorytalking.com, find where you can fill out this form, register for free call. If you're interested in my coaching program, I can answer all of your questions personally. And basically, I hope that it was helpful for you. And as always, until next time, thanks for